Un saludo muy especial para todas las personas que se conectan con esta nueva entrega de entrevistas El Espectador. Hoy me acompaña un invitado muy interesante, él es experto en defensa y desarme nuclear. Se trata del profesor Nobumasa Akiyama, quien es doctor en Derecho y profesor de Políticas Públicas y Leyes de la Universidad de Hitotsubashi. Professor, welcome and thank you for being with us in Entrevistas El Espectador.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, I would like to start by asking you what brings you to Colombia.
Yes, I think it's a bit complicated, but I was asked by Foreign Ministry to come over to Colombia and to have an occasion to exchange views with experts and students on various security issues, particularly on nuclear issues, because Japan is advocating nuclear disarmament, and at the same time we are surrounded by some nuclear weapon states. So we are facing the challenges regarding nuclear threats. So it is important for Japan to explain why Japan is pursuing nuclear disarmament. At the same time, the US-Japan alliance is important. And also, for me, it is a very great occasion to learn how Colombia and other Latin American countries are viewing the world and then the nuclear disarmament. And also, I would like to learn how each country's security are kind of driven by different factors. In particular, in case of Colombia, I'm aware that there are the domestic or the civil wars and also some concerns about the militia and so forth. So I think domestic security issues are a major drive of Colombia. So it is a very different situation from Japan, but I'm learning about a lot. And so it is important for us to compare and try to find a common ground between two countries.
Okay. I couldn't start any other way rather than by asking you about the global turmoil we're seeing with the greatest war in European soil since World War II, a major war in the making in the Middle East. So what do you think of what we're seeing today?
Right. I think now what we are witnessing is a deterioration of international norms, which has been built since the end of the World War II, that we have to seek the international order based upon the rule of law and cooperation. But now, what we are witnessing in Europe and in the Middle East are just betrayal of our tremendous efforts to construct safer and more kind of democratic world. And then now, many people started to view that power eventually would prevail. And I don't think that is a sort of a good vision. The power is an important element of international politics, but at the same time, power alone should not determine the future and the fate of the people. So, we are so much concerned if, how war would be ended, and then if we are not able to properly address the violation of international law and the violation of humanitarian norms, so we may face a more daunting future. I think international cooperation will be necessary to deal with such a crisis.
Now that you say that, both the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza have revealed the serious flaws in the international system, especially the United Nations. So what kind of reforms are there needed, and how can our countries start to undertake this challenge?
Sure. In my view, it is extremely difficult to have a reform of existing international institutions. Although I agree with you that some reform will be necessary, also we should not excessively disappointed with the performance of international system, including United Nations. So what we need to do is simply try multiple efforts through the multiple platforms, not only just relying on United Nations, but we, like-minded countries, should work together for any measures, whatever we can, in order to uphold the existing international system and maybe making more for the democratic. And so, that Colombia is a middle power, Japan is a middle power, and for middle powers and maybe small powers, the rule of law is one of the important elements to protect our national interests. So, we have to cooperate. The middle powers should cooperate. And that's so in order to prevent major powers to prevail only with their, like nuclear weapons and other powers.
Okay, so this mean creating other type of spaces or forums other than the United Nations or traditional organizations?
No, I'm not saying that. So, we have various ways of cooperation. So, like, there could be a kind of a coalition of like-minded and a coalition of some other, countries. And even if we may have a disagreement, but I think we have a common goal that we should seek a better peaceful and peaceful international order. And then, so, just putting aside difference in the various issues, maybe we could try, get together in various occasions, then discuss what we can do. So, the United Nations is one important platform, but maybe for Japan, G7 is one place where we can candidly discuss with the United States about what we should do for the peace in the Middle East or the Ukraine. But G20 is also another important platform, and both Japan and Colombia are part members of any other different types of multilateral, unilateral forums. So taking every opportunity to discuss a lot of things, and that eventually should be brought into the United Nations and others, and then that's going to be an important kind of a power to move the sort of major powers.
Okay, you have explored some disruptive innovations such as artificial intelligence, nuclear power. So what does AI have to do with nuclear capacities, and what are the challenges or even opportunities of this?
Sure. I think we have to explore more about the potential of artificial intelligence. The technology of artificial intelligence itself is still evolving, so we don't know what will be the sort of a real impact of artificial intelligence into the nuclear deterrence, nuclear arms control. But it is important for us to keep on working to identify the risks and opportunities. In particular, risk could be associated with the question on the human rationality. The nuclear deterrence is that strategy based upon the trust on the rationality. So if you expect the rationality of your adversary, you are going to design the escalation, how to prevent the escalation. So your strategy is based upon the assumption of rationality. But the question posed by artificial intelligence is, we don't know what will be the rationality. And the another question is, if we rely on the artificial intelligence in our decision systems, to what extent can we trust the suggestions made by artificial intelligence? So from a decision maker's viewpoint, artificial intelligence could be somewhat helpful to identify the target, for example, or giving some suggestions of options that the measures that they could take. But still, decision makers want to know why the artificial intelligence arrived with the conclusions. So without knowing the logic and the rhetoric behind the suggestions, probably human beings can put the complete faith in the decisions, suggestions made by artificial intelligence. So uncertainties are kind of always the problem in the nuclear decision system, but these similar uncertainties or different types of uncertainties remain as a kind of a big problem for the world of nuclear deterrence with artificial intelligence. So, it is important for us to keep on studying what kind of impact that artificial intelligence poses to the nuclear weapons. The another problem is, artificial intelligence is a cutting-edge technology. So there may be a problem of a divide between have and have-nots. Some countries are able to equip that with artificial intelligence, but some others are not. In that case, there will be another divide of the benefits. That some countries are able to enjoy the benefits of artificial intelligence, but others are not able to enjoy because of lack of technological competency. So that creates the wider inequality. So international community also need to address how to fill this gap or inequality over the technology. But at the same time, we also have opportunities to enjoy the benefit of artificial intelligence. So simply, it is important not just to kind of prohibit the use of technology or undermine the limit of availability of technology, but I think it is important for us collectively discuss what we can do to best utilize the artificial intelligence for the sake of common goal, common goods of international community.
Mm-hmm. Regarding what you're saying, should it be desirable that countries compromise to avoid the use of artificial intelligence until the view is a little bit clearer that this is not going to harm people, so that countries should avoid the use of artificial intelligence until we have some clear rules on the matter?
Well, ideally, yes, but pragmatically, probably it's impossible. Once you have access to the technology and there is no clear, like a legal, prohibition, it is impossible for you to, asking others to refrain from using the technology, and they are going to follow your suggestion or instruction. So, inevitably, the application of artificial intelligence will be advancing, in due course. And in that case, probably, we have to have a kind of simultaneous track of conversation, discussion, and research on how the AI would give an impact on the nuclear deterrence and also the stability and also how we are able to limit the negative impact that artificial intelligence could pose to the peace and the security.
Okay. Another dramatic episode you have studied is the Fukushima disaster.
Right.
So what did the world learn from this disaster? What did Japan learn from this episode?
Sure. The Fukushima disaster was a huge tragedy, and because of that, thousands of people had to leave their homeland. And so, we should spare any efforts to avoid nuclear catastrophe. Right? The human beings had several occasions of nuclear tragedies. Chernobyl in 1986, and also far before that, we had a 3 Mile Islands nuclear accident in 1970s. So then Fukushima. So these are great occasions for us to learn lessons, how to manage the technologies, and how we should not be over-optimistic about a human being's capability to manage the disaster. So it is important for us to do every effort to make sure that, that there will be no mistakes, but even with every effort, probably mistakes would happen. Human errors would happen. So then we have to also prepare for the situation when human error happens. So we need a kind of multiple layers to prevent the catastrophe. So, the importance of designing the safety in this installation. The nuclear reactors have to got the protections and various measures to prevent the accident. But, even with these multiple layered preventive measures, the accident could happen. So we also have a clear plan and the risk management plan when the accident happens. Who should do what can we do, who should be responsible, and what kind of consequence measures and the mitigation measures we should take. So, the lesson basically is that, there will be no enough preparation. There will be no enough countermeasures. So we do every effort. We cannot be too optimistic about our capabilities. So these are the lessons and principles to prepare for the disaster. So we are always facing disasters, not limited to nuclear disaster, some technological failure or the natural disaster and so forth. The principles are same. Never think that it would never happen.
Mm-hmm. Going back a little bit to the beginning about the conflicts we're seeing today, do you think that the nuclear deterrence principles are in place today, are still adequate, or do they need any type of update to face the current challenges?
I think the nuclear deterrence is a kind of belief. As long as you believe in the nuclear deterrence, it works. And now, I think Russian action during the war in Ukraine reminded many people that deterrence would work. Rather, it is important to reinforce nuclear deterrence. So it's very unfortunate that we are witnessing the world with more increased salience of nuclear weapons. And that means we are facing the increased risk of nuclear catastrophe. So if decision makers make misjudgment on a situation and have a misperceptions, a wrong belief about the consequences of their decisions, but in particular related to the nuclear weapons, then the challenge that we face is how we are going to save the world from nuclear catastrophe. So it is important for us to work on how to prevent the unnecessary, unintended escalation and the miscalculation or miscommunication or misinterpretation of the information. And for that, I think important part is the communication or strategic dialogue among the major powers as well as regional security players. And communication, dialogue, and confidence building measures will reduce the risk of unintended escalations or misperception and so forth. That's one side. On the other hand, despite of that, what we are seeing is, Russia could purposefully use the these uncertainties in order to control the situation. And some other countries are also reluctant to disclose the information on their nuclear doctrines or on their size of nuclear arsenals. So uncertainties, in fact, trigger the sort of escalation, right? So then what we need is we also have to prepare for the worst case scenario. So that unfortunately reminded us the importance of a strengthened deterrence. So deterrence is the measure to prevent the catastrophe for the short term, and also in order to protect the nation, the people. I think the political leaders have to think about credible measures for preventing escalation for the short term. And that's kind of a crisis management. The other part is for the long term, we have to reduce the risk itself. That means reduction of the risk means, we have to build a confidence between the stakeholders, with adversaries, with the like-minded countries. And then if we have a confidence and we have a mutual understanding, then we come to the situation where we try to communicate even when any contingency happens. So the habit of communication, habit of dialogue would prevent the catastrophe again. Then that's hopefully would lead into the world without nuclear weapons. So in other sense, I think the world leaders should share at least the principle that they are aiming at pursuing the world without nuclear weapons, and for that purpose, I think they have to try every effort to prevent the use of nuclear weapons and continue the history of non-use of nuclear weapons, which started on the 10th of August of 1945, next day of the dropping of bomb on Nagasaki.
And finally, I could not avoid asking you about another major concern, and it is the situation in Eastern Asia, and particularly the situation between China and Taiwan.
Right.
And I would like to ask you, what do you think is the current position of China towards Taiwan? What is China considering to make an eventual next move?
Right. So China identifies the Taiwan issue as a core national interest. And so they are not able to make a compromise with others over Taiwan issues. So many people view that eventually China tried to gain the control over Taiwan. And the question is, are they going to use force in order to control the Taiwan? And so I think the view is divided. But the problem is, do we have to prepare for the worst case, or we don't have to prepare the worst case? If we don't prepare for the worst case, then if something happens, then disaster comes to us. And then, the use of force to change the status quo is also another thing we want to avoid, right? And in Europe, it has already happened. So border between Ukraine and Russia is now being changed through the use of force. And even though some people claim that Taiwan is technically speaking part of China, so it's different from the situation in Europe. But now the current status quo is that Taiwan has its own kind of a political control by itself, but the China doesn't. But if China tried to control everything on Taiwan, it's a change of status quo. And if it happens peacefully, that's a decision by the people in Taiwan. But if it happens by the force, probably that's not a good habit that the international community would accept. So we have to keep sending a signal to Chinese that don't do that. And we respect your interests, and that's important. But at the same time, we also we should tell them that it's important for you to respect the international norms and international rules.
Mm-hmm. Well, Professor, thank you very much for your time and for being with us in Entrevistas al Espectador.
Thank you very much.
Y a todos nuestros espectadores, muchas gracias por haberse conectado con una nueva entrega de Entrevistas al Espectador. Hasta una próxima oportunidad.